You could look up the Dow Jones priced in gold, for example. And if you compare the two charts, you'll see like a very different trend and like your perception of, oh, well, the price kept going up and up, but then in gold, the price is a little bit more flat.
Yeah.
And so part of the increase in price is just due to inflation, not due to the asset's value actually appreciating.
Drop it.
Hey everyone!
How you guys doing?
So today we have Steven. Steven is a coworker of mine.
Yep.
Yep, and then we met through bowling, right?
Yeah, we were bowling together, yeah. She
We're
was
on the bowling team.
telling me about her finance channel, so I'm interested in finance.
Yeah, I invited Steven here. He has just so much experience in both like entrepreneurship and just life in general, like personal finance for young people, and I'm just so happy to have him here on this channel.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you want to share with like, I guess, young professionals or people who are still in college? Like, how do they even start? Because personal finance just seems like such a scary topic. Like, it's hard to talk about.
Yeah, so the way I started was really just focusing on saving, keeping my debt low, and it helped that, I was working very early on. So the goal I set for myself was to get a job my freshman year. And so that was kind of the first step, working while I was in college. And then I already knew that I wanted to start a business. And so my goal when I was 19 was to have a real estate business when I was 21. And so since I had that goal already in mind, it was like, okay, I know that I'm saving towards this. So that's one thing, is like setting goals and prioritizing like what you want to spend money on. But that also came with a lot of sacrifices, right?
Yeah.
So, I didn't have Jordans or like, the fanciest clothes or nice things, my mom had given me a car when I was in high school, and since the car was paid off, I held on to that car. Everybody was like, you need to get a new car, this is crap, blah, blah, blah. But, rather than trying to have a nicer car, I was like, I have a car that's paid off. That's one bill that I don't have.
Yes.
So being
true.
like very deliberate and about, being able to make sacrifices to save money. I would set, goals in terms of like, I want to save X amount of money. And then one thing that was very useful is automating it.
Oh,
so I had like, you have your savings account. And so just putting automatically having the money taken out, you could even have it in your check. So you could even have your check not go to one account, have a portion of it get split off to another account. Yeah. And that was really key in terms of like, especially trying to allocate money towards different things.
Yeah, because it doesn't even go through your hands.
Exactly. It doesn't even go than just living off of, the meager. So.
Yeah.
A couple other tips. Something that I learned from attending investment seminars was in real estate, if you want to do flipping, right, you oftentimes need like a hard money lender, or you need capital to be able to get the property, do the repairs in anticipation of quickly selling it and getting that money back. So you need like a credit line essentially.
Right.
And so one strategy for credit cards that I learned, and this is a double-edged sword, so it's like you really want to be good about managing credit cards if you're going to do this, but every quarter I would call the credit card company and ask them two things. One, to increase my credit limit.
Yes.
And to decrease my interest rate.
I didn't know you can do the second one. Wow.
Yeah, you can ask them. And it's like sometimes they'll do it and sometimes they won't. But I started off, I don't remember where it started, maybe at that time, maybe 15 to 18%. But I was able to get the interest rate on my credit down to 9%.
Damn!
Yeah, which was really good.
That's pretty good.
And then after doing that for, I think it took about 4 to 6 years, I was able to get a $75,000 credit line.
Wow.
But I started with like a couple $100.
Oh my god.
And so literally every quarter just asking, can I extend it? Can I extend it?
Never hurts to ask.
Yeah. Also the benefit of that is if you have a really large credit line, it makes your debt to credit ratio really low.
Yeah.
So, or whatever, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so it helps your credit score stay high even if you're floating a balance on your credit card. So that was kind of the other thing. But I never when I lost my businesses, I maxed out the credit cards and then just didn't pay it, filed bankruptcy and just didn't pay it. But leading up to that, originally I was doing it for real estate, but it really gave me leverage in my other businesses, just to have a flexible spending account, essentially. Yeah, quickly raised my credit score. I had like a 775 within like a couple of years of graduating. So,
wow. Yeah, definitely. Take notes. Is there any way to tell within the first period of time, like the first 6 months, to tell whether or not this person will turn into like someone who's passive in the business?
Well, I believe that, how you do the small things is how you do the big things. And so if they're not taking initiative to solve problems on their own, probably that's the biggest thing, right? It's like when you're an entrepreneur, you don't want to wait for someone to give you direction, like, hey, you need to do this, or, you want someone that's going to like think through the problem on their own and, find opportunities on their own, do all these things without you even having to say anything or without it even having to be discussed. Right. And so if you find people that are constantly solving problems without you having to say anything, you have a winner. Yeah. If you have to to remind people to do things or give people guidance, then they have like a more employee mentality than an entrepreneur mindset. Yeah. If you're not good at something, find someone who is good at something. I feel like my skill or was more of like operations, figuring out like strategically how is everything going to work out, and like who can we partner with that's going to give us more leverage or whatever.
I was talking to a friend the other day, and we talked about, in order to form a successful team, you have to have like at least one of the three qualities. One is money, another is skill set, and the third is just the work ethics. Just someone who's like willing to put whatever it takes or listen to all your orders, basically. And so, it looks like you have the skill set part. Yeah. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, those are the. I totally agree 100%. Well, we were talking a little earlier about. I was like, I love watching Animal Planet. Okay, and part of the reason is because animals figure out how to survive without money, and part of my perspective is that money is a proxy for the natural world that allows us to have like this artificial lifestyle, but it also means that our values are going to be different than in the natural world. So in the natural world, the most valuable things are resources, food, water, shelter, etc. Where we live in a world now where the most valuable thing is money, which has no intrinsic value. And so before, my goal was always about, becoming a billionaire or multimillionaire. And I used to measure my wealth based on dollars or whatever. And an interesting exercise that I encourage people to try is to price things in other assets. And it'll kind of like give you a lot of perspective about the difference between price and value. Because they're not the same thing, but we're taught that price equals value. So because something has a high price tag, we're taught that it has a lot of value.
Wait, can you give us an example? Like how do you do that exercise?
So one thing is a chart you could look up is you could look up the Dow Jones priced in gold, for example. And if you compare the two charts, you'll see like a very different trend and like your perception of, the price kept going up and up, but then in gold, the price is a little bit more flat. Yeah. And so part of the reason the price is going up is because the dollar is losing its value. Yes. And so part of the increase in price is just due to inflation, not due to the asset's value actually appreciating. Yep. And it's just. Just look at it. I don't know. Look at it. Try looking at, looking at the world priced in gold, or looking at the world. You could look at the world priced in the cost of like water or something. They had bottles of water. Yeah. But it just gives you another perspective, and so I guess getting back to it, I've gotten into prepping. Okay, and so I think my goal 5 years from now is building a business around making sure that people are able to have a sustainable lifestyle even if they don't have a lot of wealth, or if they're in a place where money becomes less valuable, because the dollar, just like any other fiat currency, has a natural life cycle. And there's some reason to believe that, you know, in our lifetime it's possible that the dollar could it could become more inflationary. I don't want to say hyperinflationary, or could come to the end of its life cycle.
Yeah.
And so, and that's happened period. You know, in 1971 is when the dollar went off the gold standard or whatnot. And I mean, technically, the government was like, I don't want to say bankrupt, but they had they didn't have enough gold to back up the value of the dollar, so they were printing more dollars than they actually had gold.
Yeah.
And so it's a different sort of scenario. Now we have a ton of debt. And so just in terms of being prepared for different economic scenarios, it's also good for emergency preparedness. If we have a major earthquake and, you know, you're not able to use those dollars, like a Hurricane Katrina situation, then just making sure people have like water and food security, and that are keeping in mind like the assets that you need to survive, and viewing those as assets. That's kind of more of my goal, is like just being prepared.
Yeah, I think what you mentioned also earlier is super interesting, is how a lot of the times people's independence is tied to financial independence.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, I'm trying to like remember what I said. Yeah, but I was basically saying that a lot of people view having money as being independent because you can go buy all these things. But in a way, it's actually making you dependent upon the financial system. Right. So the way I think about it is actually just like a cat, right? So I have a cat, and the cat, initially he would go hunt all of his food because nobody was taking care of him. He was living on his own. So he was independent, right? Yes. He had his own food, found his own water, right? But when I started feeding him, he would start gradually hunting less and less because he became to expect that there's going to be food waiting for him. So now, even though, you know, if you view the food as money, now the cat is becoming dependent upon someone else, me, providing that food for him. And so his skills that he developed in terms of being aware of his environment, knowing the best places to hunt and get all that, start deteriorating because, and he's becoming lazier, right? Now he doesn't have to run and exercise as much. Right. And so, you know, after years and years of becoming dependent, right, what happens if there's something that happens to me? Yeah. You know? Now he's not going to be optimally positioned to be independent because he might be like Garfield. He might be some fat cat now that can't jump and climb trees or run as fast and isn't as aware of its environment. Yeah. So I kind of think of it the same way, that, you know, having someone hand you a check, you're totally dependent upon that check. What happens when that check isn't there? Yeah. You know, and so learning how to be resourceful and how to create. Making sure you have the things you need to survive, whether a check comes or not, to me is important.
And also just like depending on money and thinking that, you know, money is what we strive and we chase after, but in the end, like, does money really mean anything? No.
There's no intrinsic value. And something else to explore, and I'm not going to get too deep into, is the difference between money and currency. Yeah. Because fundamentally, money is supposed to be able to store value, and a currency doesn't. And so that's and whatever. So yeah, that's something, you know, that's something to explore. Understanding the time value of money and how your purchasing power diminishes over time, which also means that the value of your savings is diminishing over time.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's essentially why a lot of people, when people say be diversified, oftentimes people limit it to like, I'm gonna have a bunch of different stocks. Right. Yeah. And I think diversification means you want to have different classes of assets. Yes. So, you know, whether that be real estate, whether that's gold, whether that's, you know, some paper assets such as stocks or whatever. And I think commodities, you know, like bottled water and being able to store food. I consider those assets because A, it's a hedge against inflation. It's going to be cheaper to buy it now than it is in the future. So if you buy it in bulk now, right,
go to Costco right now.
You'll offset your costs. Well, I mean, that's what airlines do with oil, right?
Yeah.
They buy oil 10 years in advance because they know it's going to be more expensive in the future. So I kind of look at the things I need to survive the same way. So
if you were to see yourself in college, let's say, like if you could go back in time and see yourself in college, what advice would you give him? Like you only have let's say you only have 1 minute to give all your all the things condensed, like all the things you've learned condensed in 1 minute.
I would say value time. Value every moment is precious, and if you're focused and dedicated, you can create a lot in a short amount of time. And 2, I would say networking. And people always say networking, but I one of my drawbacks is I think I'm typically more reserved. In certain settings, I'll be more outgoing or whatnot, but honing in on that, persuasive speaking and learning how to connect with people, that's key, because I mean, sales is the key to any business. Yes. And learning how to be able to work and network or connect with people is the core of sales. So I'd say
just these two.
Everything else, I think it can work. I think everything else can work itself out. But if you know how to connect and network with people, you'll be able to build partnerships. I think a lot of businesses around partnerships.
Yes.
So building partnerships, getting contracts, building a team of people, and being able to sell your vision. I mean, right? The rest is just operational stuff, in my opinion.
So what are the things that you do to help you, I guess, network better? Is it just practice makes perfect, or? Yeah,
it's definitely, I'd say practicing. One of the things that was beneficial, I was in a program, when I was an engineering program, that forced us to go to career fairs even as freshmen.
Yeah.
Even though with the expectation of not getting a job, right?
You never know.
Yeah. And then we had these corporate roundtable events, and there's basically just throwing you out there and build a relationship with these people, because it turns out 4 years later we'd be interacting with these same recruiters, and so they watched us grow up.
Yeah.
And it turns out they were headhunting us. A lot of my job offers and scholarships that I got came from recruiters that have been watching me since a freshman, and I didn't really.
That's a special relationship.
I didn't have that. Well, I didn't have that, concept at the time, but it makes sense now, and so, I don't know, I mean...
Go to networking events.
Constantly going to
networking
events.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, when I was kind of really in the game, I was always at networking events. I used to use Meetup or whatever, and I would go to tons of tech events, right? Especially if you're trying to get funding.
Oh yeah.
There's we're out here in Silicon Beach, or out by Santa Monica.
Yeah.
And so there's tons of tech groups, and there's tons of investors, and so you want to be at all of those networking events, and you'll be able to get FaceTime, and you want to build. Think of it as you want to build a friendship with these people. So you want to leverage their knowledge, not just their money, but also their knowledge and their network. So if you could get some key players in your corner, they're going to give you the ropes. They're going to teach you, they're going to help, a mentor, really.
Yeah.
And that's how you find a really good mentor, is by putting yourself out there, being aggressive, and being hungry.
Very, very powerful message. So I really hope you can find value in this video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to leave it in the comments. And we will see you next time.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Take care.